Hello, Wethersfield. Students and parents. There are more tied to the principal and people that brought that up to me when recorded involved with abuses of kids. The same names involved were forced seclusions at elderly homes too, and all ages and natures of campuses. Increasingly, people from Harvard Hospital are with a whole bunch of different foreign and domestic countries, and people involved with intelligence, with the triage, like the mental health care side, where they force mental evaluations. They're just forcing people where no one's looking. They're just putting fake transcripts. These same names have collusions at campuses with the FBI and other agencies, foreign and domestic, military, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with names that increasingly that went to my campuses that will tell you other than they were forced and are forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to pretend. Because we were in the same campus. I don't even know their names. But that's increasingly relative because of intercities before the World Trade Center attack and intra-cities before the World Trade Center attack. The FBI and the courts had effected confessions to me, requests for help. It was more than that, and I found out more and more about it. It's the branches of government individually grouped and together, use remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, offenders' roles against each age and nature of the news has predicate acts. They attach Connecticut's Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves. At the same time, these are names next to Fox Connecticut News a bunch of ways. Involved with a bunch of natures of organized crime, a whole bunch of different countries. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, various natures of co-defendants of his in a 2006 district court case. Long term and short term before that were right there. Next to Fox Connecticut News, roles of relative predicate acts and murders and untimely deaths, including if any or all of them were made up by the news. But that also makes up things where they don't have the right to lie. Also, right where they're confessing too. Because and there's also a Trantola, and Trantola is recorded confess, demonstrating, confirming. They have roles with intelligence at WFSB involved here, intercities and intracities with them, and with these people like named Phil Colello. I only saw him outside of a car. I only think I'm sure I only saw him on the inside of a car one time, and I wasn't even clear if it was perfectly if it was him. And then two other times I wasn't sure if I saw him. It was him in a car. And then in other words, or three, I think two only. And only one time I saw him driving a bike, which he's involved with a whole bunch of other people, with other countries and intercities and intra-cities. They have something to do with Middletown, with state police, and names involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids they had roles with. Also, more medical and sexual offenders of kids with New Britain Superior Court and with Hartford courts and with Connecticut's District Court involved with the principal obscure nature. And after that, obscure pictures on Twitter before the sale to X, which is also roles with predicate acts and with people tied to the name Ian and campuses intercities and interstates. See, this has been bleeding into real healthcare, like people associated with this, with predicate acts and facts into databases. Uh, Paul Zano is increasingly, I never saw him out in my life. He's involved with planting evidences in all kinds of natures of organized crime with his educators and with people with the Highlight building and with Johnson and Wales and with some Bryant University with Luigi Guerrero, who I never had a word of conversation with, nor his relatives, involved with their educators and intelligence community, FBI at New Britain Superior Court. Too, but I mean at New Britain, Central Connecticut State University. A bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain have been roles of predicate acts with facts at campuses, intercities, through time and intra-cities, and with the police departments involved with the same house/S, involved with wire crime acts and whole wire crime methods, and police that faked conversations with me distinctly when I was a kid. It wasn't at all. And they pretended other in the news too when I was an adult, while they were collusion/S, also with the Mendez police that faked conversations with me too as an adult. Increasingly, as their roles with forcing Saudis with others that forced them since they were kids too. If there's a hyper foreign involved, because they're all foreign and domestic that are involved at the same time. People from Pakistan, people from Korea, involved with the ones that put predicate acts, fake ties to me between and next to all. Increasingly, people tied to a Joe DeMoro are involved with people from Korea, from other areas that planted roles of predicate acts in my street, like a Mark Violet and Justin Kovinskis with foreign and domestic military from UConn and Central Connecticut State University in Britain that have been planting evidence on all sides of my street, and with people on Copper Mill, and with people on Church Street, and with people on Valley Crest, on the streets where they have people speaking in the town offices meetings. They have descriptions of how they have the identities of law. The identities of law are recorded involved with wire crime, mail crime acts and methods, and relative delusions, switching names, forging names. And they have readings of statutes that leave out that consciously, and they were shown they need to hide that, where they have that's it online. You have them with digital crime methods too. More digital crimes with the kids. A Leahy family has men and women in the intelligence community. They have their kids' picture brought into it too. And with judges and prosecutors involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, also dactyl delusions raw, and roles of the digital crimes, changing and faking and hiding evidences. A Judge Killian is involved with this Leahy family and other doctors while changing digital evidences. Their roles of rape crimes, rape threats sustained. Little fake tough guys you guys have into branch. We'll call it fake, in other words. And increasingly people tied to this Robert Rodriguez involved with interreligious spots, and people next to them involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and calling attacks on themselves. And they don't get a response, they just fake it. And they have it in other ways. I never had a conversation with Paul Zano. I only know him seeking me out to make confessions and demonstrations of his roles with a Mark and Rick Cianfaglione, who confessed that Rick Cianfaglione confessed that there's a Leahy family and a Brian Silver. Brian Silver's involved with the courts and with the Leahy family, with medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, with a whole bunch of different countries too. And people I don't know the names of, and they're educators and people on my street involved with them, with the intelligence community, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting me in fake conversations with police, putting fake wire crime methods, lying about what they think about when using truth for lies, like saying people are saying bad things about the police. They're switching names. That's, in other words, that's worse than a rat trap. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusion, sick people doing that. They can't put their motivations for doing things on paper because I caught them clearer than day with this Kevin Dillon and with my previous neighbors. He should not have hid that from the new neighbors. What I caught Kevin Dillon doing on all sides of our houses too. Collusions with the retired police chiefs too. In other words. And I never had a word of conversation with Kevin Dillon in my life. He has other people make confessions, and then he non-verbally confirms roles with this. He's got Anna Dillon and how she switches, sometimes puts the name Annie Dillon involved too, with locations involved, like all along Fox Hill. And exception nature, they have roles with exploitations of that increasingly. Along roads and routes. I don't know where they live. Increasingly, people on Two-Route Highway and conjunctions to it are people that put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. I don't even know them. In other words, and ones that try to make fake exceptions are mixed. Has something to do with a Julie Mancuso. I wasn't even around her to say hello to her. I don't even know her. In other words, as one of the people involved with the FBI, and then there was a report that it might have been a murder or there was an investigation of untimely death or something there. But a multiple untimely deaths and one at Trinity College is involved with the Joshua Stryker, involved with the Don LeConte, and others I don't know the names of, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures. Try to take a picture of me real quick to make it look like I even had a word of conversation. I never had a word of conversation with the Don LeConte. She's increasingly involved with her educators, putting predicate acts in databases and her people tied to her, and the people that are speaking in the Wethersfield. You know, you guys are hiding what the principal confessed and what I recorded, actually digitally recorded. You guys have not proper roles with the intelligence, with a whole bunch of people from Wethersfield tied to Central Connecticut State University, and people involved with Chet Casper and a Robert Heimgartner, involved with a former Mayor Gold and his family member, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties between kids, all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield. And people have been planting federal evidences, crimes, and predicate acts rolls with them, wrongdoing rolls with them, on the sides of parks. That's also recorded, and then pretending others recorded too, because these are names involved with the ones directly and indirectly involved with World Trade Center predicate acts, and with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, first forced years apart, and more involved then and now. These are also names tied to more leaders of the kids. They wouldn't have to be victim predators if you would follow mandated law. They would be able to look at and understand the law different too, because as you're gonna discern. Yeah, people involved with predicate acts, methods, and collusions with all natures of crime scenes, changing and faking so long, everything that when some things happen, they they can't even good or bad. I mean, like, in other words, people were innocent, or if they were guilty, they have to change it based on, the statutes and precedents. The readings of it are criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions run. That's recorded, and then recorded. They are being and have been used remotely, showing they need to hide that there and at other locations. It is where and how all natures of investigators were used remotely originally, and that's increasingly self-valued for where they are, how they are used remotely now. Criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. 3 ways. And styles, roles, needs, and natures of collusion / S, otherwise sensing that body, including if that body is a majority of people, including if that body is every voice in a single country. If its locations, areas, and states are entertained location, Boolean logic. For example, absent of exception nature proper, as is recorded. People don't realize, but we could observe this. That's what we observe. We could observe where how we can make hyper positives out of the great negative of having had replaced. How we have black pupils and whites of eyes, and revelations come from this. The hyper additionally, when you look at the fish, their eyes behind the glass in the market. In other words, when you look at the other animals, they have those quality aspects in nature, distinct, but also non-distinct and simultaneous, but also / hyper simultaneous. And the / part is important because nature itself shows us the difference between criminal insidiousness, natures of positives and positive. But to appreciate this and to speak about it properly, we can't afford entertain. quality aspects in nature inherent to, active to, and increasingly to, only capable of being to with styles of logic, nature of logic regarding the subject treatments with each age of fact should be nature. A human fact should be nature. Breaching method is a scientific value presented to us by nature as one of the things that is true always. That was the sum value of those laws that were in place before America's founders were born. And as torture, extortion, slavery method, clearer than day, having been sustained against everyone of Europe and of Africa and of the world, of Asia, the world. Everyone forgot the ancient sciences. There are proofs that yin yang and alpha and omega were revealed together when the differences of countries were valuing that as means to help discern the hyper invisible but still discernible. That identity of all space / existence that shows us it is functional. How we could discern, like, for example, how we're hunger now and thirst through systems tactile from that which is capable of affording to produce qualities of soil context, like where and how these seeds really came to be. And there are proofs there are a whole bunch of seeds that were just taken to extinction to lock everyone only capable of being on value nature systems tactical ulterior from nature's. So to specifically to keep how and why syntactically people ignore that as the hyper evidential. For example, as the hyper evidential, having black people's right to life and subject treatments of what slavery is about, with this absent from the answer. Because what generates this shows other answers. It shows us another nature of evidence, the hyper evidential, that which is true always, and also further positive onto itself, and an appreciation of, and as appreciate, as itself, as its appreciation of a special difference, its way, or it is forced from here, where earth and life has a special difference, a concentrated identity of relativity, tallest parts of space / existence, the way it does, but then further hyper additionally, in a concentrated way, temporary / lasting, but not lasting here, where Earth can be demonstrated to, where the sun goes round. It shows us we are right where it's about to be too hot or too cold. It's showing us about positive and negative. No. Showing us about the value of clean water. How we are identity, not as ground, but as ground hyper additionally anyway. How we are made complete by we are not, we didn't invent how the other species' bodies have two eyes. So any role we had inventing that for ourselves, too, is exception nature that come with demonstration of the same thing, though. There is a hyper archetypal, that's hyper natural, but then there was a hyper archetypal that no one discerned, and it caused a whole bunch of bad things, and it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the phenomenon of individual names as countries to be used by locations, areas, and states, and then defended in demonstrations and defenses of themselves wrongly, leaving out, blaming on other things others themselves with a breaching method cost, and then defending that, and then more and more the breaching method made that used effectively to keep names and name further the names of the people the science is incapable of affording to be discerned. Short words, especially short words with convictions, let alone convictions with guilt, proper, lest alone their protraction might be. There are consolidated were roles already with the people who speak on crimes as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim who was already roles with predicate acts with facts. Collusion slash S at all natures of campuses. Black pupils. Our course returns. President slash chief is part cipher. James Madison didn't have free speech when he was our founder, with the founders behind him and his plan. Before they went and then got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan, which was unfolding at Wethersfield, Connecticut, for example, where George Washington had to come using that plan to counter extort and to force means to win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, George Washington had to come to Wethersfield, Connecticut. See, we still have at and next to those founding locations roles with predicate acts, with facts, with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, offensively planting and having planted that too. In other words, and motivations for it. Forgiveness is so you can let people tell too, because there are other names of other countries involved with those same names. And then further, there are educators the same way, but also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. And them not legitimately with where and how they have acting professors involved too. Intercities and intra-cities as the ones involved from the founding locations in Wethersfield. Also with a whole bunch of people at New Britain's Central Connecticut State University involved with mass predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, method, roles, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and every year since. I've been asking you guys. I'll tell you something too. Donald Trump was asking for President slash Chief Trump was asking for equality of fact, human nature. That is being forbid, and the nature of debate is being forced. Though pretend with passions and emotions, pretend they can't realize that there are all kinds of different countries here, there, suits and ties, counters, exceptions. The natures of what they call diplomacy, it's natures of industries like psychiatry, tactically delusions, raw, all kinds of natures of organized crimes, and their roles with the judicial and corrections officers as they are actually manifest. And like with differences, we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time because it's projected to us by that which you can't mimic without having demonstrations of it. But we haven't appreciated that because we haven't mimicked, and we have self-value roles with that. Well, that's what we trained at college. Well, that's why it's important to pay attention to how the nature of debate contains quality aspects of nature that are, the only way they can defend themselves is to self-value this having been too. And this is manifest where and how convictions are made regarding the principles of history as collusion slash S against the principles generated by understanding the principal plan of James Madison and of the founders behind him, as him and his plan. Again, then George Washington agreed to using help. And that was before he was even a president. And we're supposed to appreciate and understand why and how even when James Madison was the president, he still didn't have free speech. The breaching method that had entrenched already since before they were born, slavery roles, northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, because it was a singular breaching method there. And roles with it were methods of its breaching method, blaming other things, others, or selves for nature's demonstrations of it, and leaving out that scientific value, that human fact, human nature breaching method, and the other scientific values as things those laws were value as that are true always. And simultaneously, some ways, it was things that were variably They were very variably about prejudice. But even where they're about prejudice or racism, those are exceptions that come with demonstration slash S of the same thing slash S. The breaching method forced that to be syntactically manifest. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everybody. See, the nature of debate is used remotely with subject treatments. People offensively forbid mandated law. So I've been asking to get them on paper since before the World Trade Center attack. And that's how I know all these. I didn't know the extent of it. I didn't even know all the names. I didn't know the name of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. The FBI has roles with people from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence of Corrupt Organizations Act, and his lawyer, Robert Chevalier. If he wants to say that wasn't his lawyer, a judge Nations or a judge I forgot. I don't know the judge's name, but he directed him if that case, part of the case, ever came up, not to go there without a lawyer. But there are transcripts of that. His lawyer, Robert Chevalier, is involved with his with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin's co-defendants too, but also their lawyer personally and professionally involved with law offices in Newington and East Hartford and next to the state capitol, and not far from the Harry P. Stowe, Mark Twain House, also not far from the state capitol. Also involved with subject treatments leaving out and having left out the black people's rights of eyes, and where people have passions and emotions regarding Mark Twain and artists, leaving out the breaching method's use of them. So, in other words, we have other communicated for George Washington and for James Madison and the founders behind him before that, and then with them together. And that's also with the Native Americans. There are proofs that Native Americans are who helped James Madison to be so prolific regarding the defense of the Constitution unabridged, and get where and how we and why we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. Defended syntactically, even though the breaching method roles were forced, entrenched, and self-valued by all, or that would be sensed by everyone. And when I mean self-valued, it's right where no one self-values it. But there were still and are still internationally monitored conversations, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. And the adaptations to this are sensed and understood better than they understand themselves since some ancient times. Prepare our minds, ye human species body of individual bodies, all group differences, through address these through systems of bridge. This is clouding that which generates all. And it will only stay positive unto itself, increasingly, or it is forced from here. These the Hadis, force space nature transfer per science. Science of pantheism. It's about why and how we need more than one name for God. For the God, in other words, because it goes with demonstrations of how and why it is functional, being that there is one identity, hyper invisible but still discernible, and why and how simultaneously there are parts of itself, distinct parts of the hyper invisible but still discernible. This is what we are discerning when we discern. Excuse me. the value of participle natures, the present participle, the past participle. They're about time, where they're about this identity of forever nature, to the extent we can discern. And that comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, equally value, and the value of that, three ways, equally value, increasingly. All identities of volume are inside, while as its own, only increasing as volume. It is the volume science attached from all things, even if they are made up, even if they are. It is the difference of the finite, smallest finite detail, the order of the finite. It is the difference of what is active, a grouped truth / truths, to the extent we know, and as the extent we don't. Is the same with the breath, is that which is showing us the value of seasons, and simultaneously its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that at the same time. Where seasons, we know the value of them that are not even here now. But now we know these values through systems tactical ulterior. And then further hyper additionally, where we are ground. Well, not, but anyway. For that same identity of value progression that shows us the other species bodies. It uses the species body of correlation system. It's not just family, genus, species, family, class, family, genus. I forgot the list, man. All right, thank you, people. Have a good day. Everyone, go back and remember that list.